We'll be kicking off by hearing from Emily Lauinger. Lauinger. Emily graduated from MSUM in 2020 with a degree in advertising and public relations. She has worked at MSUM as a digital marketing specialist for the past year and looks forward to many more years here. In her free time, Emily loves obsessing over her cats, Katniss and Princess Tiabini. Okay. And reading books. Her favorite genre is fantasy. Tonight, she'll be sharing the story of her multiple sclerosis diagnosis and the perspective shift that followed. Welcome to the stage, Emily Lauinger, you guys. Have a heart.
Confidence is something I struggle with quite a bit. It also happens to be extremely important, especially when it comes to making decisions. When I was young, I was extremely indecisive. Subway, the sandwich shop, was my worst nightmare, and it took me a while to work up the courage to actually order something for myself. And when I started on the swim team, I was so afraid of jumping from the starting block that my mom told my teammate to just push me in. And she did. And annoyingly, it worked. So that's how I learned to combat my indecisiveness. I plunged in. So what happens when decisions get bigger than a sandwich or swim meet? In fall 2021, I would be faced with many hard decisions that would test my confidence. My first decision came when I felt dizzy the summer before and didn't go to the doctor. My next decision came when my right eye developed a blurry spot I originally thought was from my contact, but would worsen even while wearing glasses. I would decide to go to an optometrist instead of a doctor. And when I inevitably got sent to a doctor after the optometrist had exhausted all his tests, and when that doctor looked at me cluelessly and told me to come back a week later if it was still bad and to take ibuprofen for the pain, I made the decision to make my own appointment with an ophthalmologist. I had more confidence in myself than in my doctor. During that fall, I had a lot of doctor's appointments, MRIs, and blood tests. I learned what was wrong with my eye was called optic neuritis, which is when your optic nerve gets inflamed and affects your vision. Most of the time, eyesight returns after a month or so. That's what mine did. Unfortunately, optic neuritis is a very common first symptom for a few neuroinflammatory diseases, specifically multiple sclerosis. The first MRI I had was of my brain and eyes. I pored over those results trying to interpret them, and even though I knew it wasn't good, I tried so hard to imagine it was. The doctor who ordered that MRI didn't tell me what it meant. He just referred me to a neuroinflammatory specialist. The first I heard of this was when the nurse called me to make the appointment. It was an awkward conversation, to say the least. On November 11th, 2021, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, also known as MS. The specialist told me what it was and what I had, and even though at this point I had read everything there was to be found on Google about it. For those who don't know, multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease that affects the nervous system. My immune system was attacking the protective covering on my nerves, called myelin, which caused the information to travel more slowly. There's no cure and no known cause. There are a few types as well. Mine is relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, or RRMS. It's pretty common. It's the more common version for younger people and women. And fun bonus, everyone experiences the disease differently. My doctor doesn't even know what to expect in my disease progression, which isn't the most comforting thing to hear from a doctor. In addition to the decisions I had to face, I also had a major hit to my confidence. I couldn't trust my brain or my immune system anymore. When my leg falls asleep, I wonder if the tingliness will go away or if it'll be a new symptom. It's actually a really common symptom. When my contact moves and I have to blink to clear it, I wonder if my optic neuritis has returned. And when I get a headache, I wonder if I just need to drink water or if it's something more. It's hard to know the correct way to respond, especially after experiencing such a scary symptom. After my diagnosis, I found myself appreciating the small things a little more. I appreciate colors and my eyes having the same prescription, which I lost while I had optic neuritis. And when I ran on a treadmill for the first time after my diagnosis, I couldn't stop smiling. I may not be able to do that later in my life. I appreciate my memories, my ability to speak, taste delicious food, which maybe if you've had COVID, you might also know what that might be like, listen to music, and so much more. Here's the thing. Even without MS, those weren't guaranteed. So many people my age, and even not my age, take those for granted, but I will always appreciate them. I made another decision during this time. I wanted a new job. I liked my current job enough, but I wanted a job where I felt a stronger purpose in addition to, well, better health insurance. At the time, I was panicking about fitting all my career goals in before I retire, which at the time I thought was rapidly approaching. I was more selective of where I applied, and when I saw a job listing for a digital marketing specialist at MSUM, I breathed deeply and took the plunge. I thought it was unlikely that I would get this position, but spoiler alert, I did. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I celebrated my 1-year anniversary at MSUM. I get to work in higher education, something I'm passionate about, and have great health insurance and sick leave, which is very exciting when you've gone without and had to use up nearly all your vacation time for doctor's appointments. And with better health insurance, I had more options. I had another decision to plunge into. How did I want to treat my MS? I decided aggressively. An incredible thing about multiple sclerosis is that there's been a lot of research in recent years. An MS diagnosis now is much different than an MS diagnosis even 20 years ago. We have a lot of treatment options. Even so, it took me until September 2022, 9 months after my diagnosis, to find a medication my insurance and I agreed on. I'm standing in front of you today, 15 months after my diagnosis, so it's not as tough to talk about because I've been able to get on meds and be more confident that I'm managing my MS well. But let me tell you, there were times during my diagnosis when I couldn't stop crying. It was so bad that I thought it was another symptom of MS, which, by the way, is not impossible. Basically, everything is a symptom of MS. No matter how hard I tried, the tears kept coming. I had never felt like that before in my life. I thought everything was over. Advice on the internet was telling me to say goodbye to the person I was before the diagnosis, but I didn't want to do that. Instead, I stopped obsessing over the future. I let my own image and myself be malleable. I trust that I'll be okay. I could freak out about all the little things that could happen, or I could focus on the things that I can control. While the year after my diagnosis was chaotic and messy and remains hard to put into words, I think about what I accomplished. Even while so much was happening, I was able to make decisions. My decisions led to a diagnosis, a new job that fits perfectly with my life goals, and got me on good medication. It led me to this stage, telling my story and hopefully raising awareness to a disease that affects 1 million Americans, and yes, young people as well. Most of all, I made it through. I may lack confidence in many areas of my life still, but I trust myself now more than ever before. For my fellow indecisive people, I hope you leave today trusting yourself to make the decisions. And even if you're not sure what the right one is, take the plunge and make one anyway. Thank you.